Mexico has just delivered the most devastating ultimatum in history to the United States, and when it materializes, all American influence in Latin America will collapse like a house of cards. What is happening right now will redefine the geopolitical map of the continent forever. Folks, get ready, because what I'm about to reveal is one of the most explosive twists in modern international politics. While everyone was focused on other global crises, Mexico quietly executed one of the boldest diplomatic moves in history, and the target of this operation, the United States itself and its attempt to control Venezuela. Imagine the following situation. The country long seen as America's obedient neighbor suddenly stands up and says, "Enough." Not only that, it allies with America's biggest rivals to push Washington out of an entire region. That is exactly what is happening, and the consequences go far beyond what you can imagine. If you want to understand how this geopolitical revolution will change everything in Latin America, leave a like now, share your first impressions in the comments, and subscribe to the channel, because this story is going to get even more intense. The shift began when Claudia Sheinbaum took office as Mexico's president. In a move that shocked the world, she issued a historic ultimatum to the United States. Its presence and attempts to intervene in Venezuela must cease immediately, or it will face the consequences of a united regional bloc. Since the rise of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, the United States has treated the country as a strategic adversary. It unleashed a series of brutal political and economic interventions, including severe sanctions aimed at completely isolating the Caribbean nation. But Nicolas Maduro's government, backed by Russia and China, resisted the siege. And now, with Mexico's full support and the growing influence of the BRICS, the situation has reached a point of no return for American interests. In a determined speech, Claudia Sheinbaum did not hesitate to reaffirm Mexico's stance. No to interventionism. This is not just a conviction, it's in the Constitution. With these words, she not only defended Venezuela, but sent a direct message to Washington. Mexico will no longer be complicit in American aggressions in the region. This message was reinforced by massive backing from the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, who are also firm opponents of US policies in Latin America. The bloc's stance is crystal clear. American interventionism no longer has a place in a region seeking total autonomy. The United States' constant international pressure to topple the Maduro government and the devastating sanctions on Venezuela's economy have been interpreted as a brutal violation of people's right to decide their own future. What at first seemed like Venezuela's isolated struggle has now become a global diplomatic battle. With their growing economic and political clout, the BRICS have called into question the United States' hegemonic role across the entire region. Russia and China in particular have aligned with Venezuela both militarily and economically, helping stabilize its economy through massive energy and trade cooperation agreements. This turn opened up entirely new possibilities for Venezuela, while leaving the United States in an extremely uncomfortable position, losing ground in a region it historically considered its private backyard. Mexico did not hesitate to take a leadership role in this radical paradigm shift. Since taking power, Sheinbaum has reiterated a commitment to non-intervention and peaceful diplomacy, but she has shown that neutrality does not mean passivity. Instead of bowing to brutal external pressure, the country aligned itself with nations fighting for a new distribution of global power. By aligning interests with the BRICS, Mexico placed itself at the center of a united front directly challenging America's historic dominance. Washington's response was immediate, but riddled with uncertainty and desperation. Facing an increasingly strong coalition in the region, the US administration stepped up frantic efforts to delegitimize governments that support Venezuela. But Mexico and the BRICS message is crystal clear. Interventionism and sanctions are no longer enough to keep the region under American control. Latin American nations see in this alliance a historic opportunity to reshape their future away from Washington's influence. The economic implications are devastating for US interests. For years, US-imposed sanctions on Venezuela brutally impacted its economy. Now, with Chinese and Russian collaboration, the country is once again receiving massive investments that have helped restore vital infrastructure. If you're following this historic transformation, leave a like, comment what you think about this alliance, and subscribe to the channel for more explosive analysis. Economic ties between Venezuela and BRICS countries have tightened dramatically, allowing Maduro's government to partially circumvent the isolation imposed by the West. For the United States, this situation is absolutely alarming. Losing influence in Venezuela and throughout Latin America is a strategic blow of gigantic proportions, especially as Washington already faces tensions with China and Russia across multiple international arenas. The Latin American region, rich in natural resources and strategically positioned, is no longer willing to remain a battlefield in global power disputes. The role of Mexico and the BRICS in joining forces marks a historic turning point. US pressure on Venezuela, which initially seemed a matter of time, now faces consolidated and powerful resistance. With the sovereignty of peoples at stake, the message is unequivocal. There is no longer room for foreign interventionism. Latin America is forging its own destiny, free from the chains of American hegemony. The cards are on the table, and the future may be in the hands of those who, until now, were treated as mere bystanders in the global game. Mexico's firm stance and the BRICS' growing support for Venezuela represent a turning point in contemporary geopolitics, with implications far beyond Venezuela's borders. This movement reflects a profound change in international relations and underscores the growing challenge to American hegemony in the region. Mexico took a bold step by explicitly aligning itself with BRICS interests. This shift is significant not only for defending Venezuela, but because it reflects a renewed valuation of sovereignty and the self-determination of Latin American peoples, essential elements ignored by US foreign policy. Mexico is not only defending Venezuela, it is sending a clear message to all of Latin America. The era of foreign domination, especially American, has definitively come to an end. For the BRICS, this Mexican alignment also represents an opportunity to consolidate influence on a continent historically treated as Washington's backyard. Growing cooperation with Venezuela, including infrastructure investments, trade agreements, and military support, openly challenges the system imposed by the West. The situation has set a dangerous precedent for US interests. If Mexico, a bordering nation historically seen as subordinate, can openly challenge Washington, which other countries will do the same? Brazil has already shown signs of increasing independence. Argentina has its own relationships with China. Colombia is reconsidering its alliances. The entire continent is watching Mexico's example closely. Washington has found out the hard way that it can no longer count on the automatic submission of its neighbors. Latin America has matured politically and economically, becoming less dependent on the United States for prosperity and security. China offers investments without political conditions. Russia provides advanced military technology. The BRICS provide alternative markets. Suddenly, historical dependence on the United States no longer seems necessary. By taking this courageous stance, Mexico is not only upholding principles, it is demonstrating that there is an alternative path for Latin American countries seeking real autonomy without fearing American retaliation. Claudia Scheinbaum understands that the world has changed, that the United States is no longer the only superpower capable of offering prosperity and security, and that Mexico can lead a historic continental transformation. The American response has been predictable: economic threats, diplomatic pressure, attempts at isolation. But these tactics no longer work when a country has the support of powerful rival powers. If you want to follow every development in this geopolitical revolution, leave a like, share your opinions in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Venezuela has become a symbol of resistance, not only for Latin America, but for all countries facing US pressure. Mexican and BRICS support shows that such resistance can succeed. Washington is losing influence not only in Venezuela, but across an entire region it always considered its natural sphere of influence. It is a paradigmatic change that could completely redefine hemispheric relations. Latin America's landscape is undergoing total transformation. What began as a defense of Venezuelan sovereignty has become a continental movement against American hegemony. And Mexico, a country that long avoided direct confrontations, decided to lead this revolution. The implications go far beyond geopolitics. Economically, the region is integrating with alternative Asian and European markets. Militarily, it is developing independent capabilities. Culturally, it is reaffirming its own identity. For the United States, this is the greatest crisis of hemispheric influence since the Cuban Revolution. But unlike that moment, it is not a single country defying Washington. It is a continental coalition backed by the world's major powers. The era of absolute American dominance in Latin America has come to an end. Mexico and the BRICS have written a new page in the continent's history, and that page tells the story of peoples who decided to forge their own destiny, free from external impositions. Mexico's ultimatum is not just diplomacy. It is a declaration of independence by an entire continent that has discovered its strength when united. And for the first time in decades, the United States does not have an adequate response to this new reality.